everyone, and welcome to a new episode of BIM After Dark Live. Today is an exciting one. This is episode 94, and we're going to be talking about residential design and build using Revit. I'm going to be talking about the process and tools and lessons learned that I took away from building this studio that I'm in here, which is my home office. It also includes an addition, a deck, a dining room, and then this room that we're in here. But what you're going to see is it's kind of an interesting story. It's not just your typical construction project. There's an interesting timeline in place and some interesting things that come out of it. But what I really wanted to show is really the culmination of my life experience in the profession and how I sort of tied it all together to not only design my own project, but also general contract it, so build it myself as well, including self-performing, using my bare hands to build a lot of this stuff. So I look forward to going through this with you guys today. For those who are live here with us in the chat, I'm going to be checking it out, and feel free to ask questions, and I will make sure to try my best to answer those questions along the way. So I look forward to that as well. It's been a little while since it's just been me and no guests, so I'm looking forward to that. And I think you guys are going to find this super interesting. I'm going to share a lot of information, including some of the early cost estimates, some of the ways I scheduled it, the ways I use Revit to help along the process, not just being the architect, but also being the builder. And some things that I took away from that, as well as a bunch of cool drone footage, time-lapse footage, Revit models, you name it. We're going to be going back and forth through it all. So yeah, I wanted to say hello to everyone in the chat who's here. I see Jim and Yogi and Rick, a lot of guys that hang out with us regularly, so I appreciate that. Thanks for joining us. And if this is your first time here, make sure you check out all the other live streams, the other 93 episodes, and subscribe to the channel. And Chris is here from New Zealand. Hey Chris, how's it going? Okay, so this is going to be interesting. I've got a lot of multimedia here, so bear with me. I'm going to try and make this as smooth as possible, but I am super excited to share this with you guys. And I'm thinking that you guys are going to take something away from this. I'm hoping that you'll take something away from this. Anytime someone shares their experience, process, tools, lessons learned with me, I always take something away. So that's the goal here. Not just all the little Revit nuggets, but even the contracting, the building it myself, and honestly, I feel like understanding that side of what we do as architects just makes us better architects. So hey David, hey Jamie, thanks for joining us. So with that, what I figured I would do is we'll jump right into this, and I'll tell you a little story as we kind of go through here. So the story starts in August of 2021 or 2022. I don't even know anymore. The story begins in August of 2020, actually. So this is kind of in the middle of the pandemic, you name it, right? And at the time, if you guys were sort of watching the live streams as we went through there, I started moving my desk around in the house. So my wife and I decided that we were ready to have baby number 2, and so that's sort of the process there. With that revelation came, well, my office was in the spare bedroom. Where am I going to go? So the thoughts were, how are we going to start moving around and sort of making this work? So if you've watched the live streams between sort of December of 2020 through April, May of 2021, you'll probably notice the background changed a little bit as I went from a spare room to a fold-out table in our master bedroom, down to a fold-out table in the basement, as we sort of came into this. So the timeline was kind of set in the sense that we knew that we were going to be adding to our family, and we knew that we wanted to do an addition to the house. We weren't planning on moving. So I had the design started. I started doing the drawings and so on and so forth, and thought we had some time. Turns out that we were expecting a lot sooner than we thought, and so basically the clock started ticking. So by October or so of 2020, we knew we kind of had a deadline of May of the following year to finish this work. So that's kind of the deadline we're going to be working with today. And so what I want to do throughout this whole presentation is really keep the timeline in track, because I think it adds a little little suspense to the process, and a little different of a schedule enhancement than we're probably used to. That being that my soon to be daughter was going to be born, and so we had May was basically the drop dead deadline, which is what we had to hold. So the clock started ticking. So what I want to do first is sort of explain the project a little bit, and then I'll jump into the model. I'll jump into some of the things I did working up to the bidding permit process, and then we'll jump right into construction, which begins around January. So that's kind of what we'll do. First, what I'll do is I'll just explain what the actual project is. So this is, or was, I should say, this was our existing house as it stood that summer, rolling into 2021, and you could see it's a raised ranch. Anyone not familiar with this style house? It's a raised ranch, not a split level. Even though I keep calling it split level, it's more of a raised ranch. Basically bedrooms, bedrooms, kitchen, most of the living space on that top floor overhanging. And then on the bottom floor, there's a half of a finished basement. And the other half is a garage. Pretty standard layout around here in Connecticut, at least. And so this is the plan. The plan. Here's my twin motion renderings. Was to add an addition to the back side of the house, about 200 square feet per floor. Total of about 400 square feet. Adding a nice large deck with the stairs tucked in the back, which was kind of an interesting detail that caused probably more problems than it should have, but I love the way it came out. And then on the bottom floor is the office that I'm sitting in now, and on the top floor is a dining room. And then the second phase of it was redoing the kitchen a little bit to make this work. So that was kind of the design. That's the twin motion rendering I made back in 2020 to convince my wife that this is the design that we're going to go for. And then here was the finished product. So as we work towards that, I want to sort of walk through some of the things I did on both the architecture side as well as the sort of contractor side of this process. I decided to general contractor myself for a couple of reasons. First being cost. Obviously there's a savings to some extent, depending on how you consider the cost of an experienced general contractor with experienced and subs that he can rely on versus a new guy with schedule issues and all that. But that was part of it. But the other part of it was honestly, I wanted to try it out. I've always wanted to do it. Part of the reason why I decided to join a construction management firm. Part of the reason why I had a minor in construction management is that I've always been interested in designing and building projects. And at this point in time, I've had 5 or 6 years working for a large CM on top of my architectural background. So I really wanted to put that to practice. And what better time than on my own project? But of course, also with a deadline that was pretty robust. So Reggie just said raised ranch twinsies. Yes, it's definitely a pretty common house style, at least around the Northeast, but I'm assuming around a lot of the USA at least as well. So let's jump into real quickly the permitting process and the permit drawings and sort of how I laid this thing out in Revit, and then we'll run through some of the scheduling and logistics of that piece of it. So here's the Revit model. If you guys have followed me along over the years, you've probably seen some videos where I've used this as an example, as well as even some live streams as well. So you saw this was kind of the rendering there that we saw before. If I flip this thing to existing, you can get a sense of before and after, right? So there's our before, right? And then if I go back to new, there's our after. And there we go there. And so, as far as the documents were concerned, pretty straightforward set, luckily. There we go. Pretty straightforward set. All of the typical BS on the front end, showing codes and typical details. Demo drawings. A lot of the demo was mostly just the demolition of the deck, which I did myself with my father, and the demo of the stone wall and the dirt was done by an excavator, which we'll dig into a little later. As far as the documents are concerned, you guys may have seen some videos where I've showed some of my visibility graphics over the demo drawings. The roof demolition is something that became a little bit of an issue moving forward, and I'll show you some examples of what happened there. But for the most part, I was just removing the skin here, demolition of the roof, and then on the bottom, on the basement level, it was removing a window and then also removing part of the foundation wall to make the door into my office, which was also a fun learning experience there. One thing that I did do, and you'll notice in these drawings, is they're colored. This is how I typically do my residential sets, and I actually printed them in color. There was only 5, 6. There was only like 7 sheets or so. So my submissions for permit, I printed in color, and I submitted them that way. And I do honestly think that it helps a lot to have good-looking drawings that are visually not just correct but also visually appealing. I really do think so. I got a lot of compliments from the building department who reviewed these, and so I don't take that back. The one thing that I did learn is once you use these drawings to go out to the subcontractor market, framers, concrete, you name it, some of the feedback I got from actually some of the subcontractors was, why don't you take some of the color and the shadows and the pretty stuff off of it when you're going to subcontractors? Because when we see that, we think expensive. I know it makes absolutely no sense when you think about it in the long term, but it was a lesson learned. So I ended up redoing, thankfully, that was a very honest subcontractor that I reached out to, and I ended up having a separate set that I printed out that had shading, shadows, color, all the stuff off, and looked like a generic drafted set. So something to think about there when you think about drawings and what we're producing. Who's the audience and what does it mean? You notice that there's going to be a lot of 3D views in the drawings, and throughout the whole process, I use the model in 3-dimensional views to help explain to subcontractors how to build it. But for the permit and for the people approving it, the building department, the planning, zoning, having those pretty drawings was super helpful. So it wasn't that much effort to sort of pare back, but just something to think about. It's great to make these beautiful drawings, and I'm the first person who will make them as attractive as possible. But it may look different when you're talking to potentially a subcontractor or something like that. So sort of looking through the drawings, here's the floor plans. As you can see right here is the line of the existing house. Right here is the addition. This is on the what we'll call the first floor, which is the dining room addition. Here's the nice big deck all the way across here, with the stairs kind of tucked inside. And then on the lower level, here's the office where I'm sitting right now. I'm sitting currently right there. But you can see, so it's pretty straightforward. It's just 12 foot 8, give or take, and then by like 15 feet long. I believe it's 15 feet. So nice little small addition, with the idea there too was also to have a space underneath the deck, which I also ended up putting under decking so that it was a waterproof space as well, and then keeping the roof as simple as possible, with just a nice little gabled end. Notice I sucked in the corner of this. I was planning on changing materials, trying to make the roofs join nicely. It's always, whenever you have something turning like this or joining, it's always nice to have a little relief in the corner there, and that helped a lot constructability wise too, which was awesome. So somebody said they love the exploded axons. Well, I got more for you. These details here, this is just a great example of why we do this as architects. I don't know, and I'm just as guilty as you guys are. I knew this project was going to be a zip wall job, but I still put the old freaking flashing details in there. And again, sometimes it's to appease the building department, but I don't know why. And these are just CAD drafted things that I've had for 15 years that I just put in there, even though they may not, even apply to this project. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else, but they did fill in the space and they made the drawings look good for the building department. So that goes along with lines with like those old roof details that we all put on drawings and so on and so forth. As far as the elevation set, here's our exterior elevations. It's only 3 because it's an addition, right? So super simple. You can see on the top. I'll zoom in a little bit. Notice that I have shading, depth queuing, line work. It all looks very nice. Again, like I said, especially when you print this in color, it looks beautiful. And for permit drawings, it was awesome. I ended up removing the shading, making it, no shadows, no colors, and I printed it black and white for the bidding. Here's the side cutting through the deck, looking at the this would be the south elevation. It's just two sliding doors, and then the north elevation is two double hung windows there. You can see that, and then of course I do have 3D views even on the elevation view. Again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I think someone said, Reggie already said in there. And it's true, right? Putting 3D views on drawings, or at least giving access to the 3D model too in general, it's just so helpful for people to understand the project and get a full grasp of what it is that you're trying to design, right? And that's the goal, right? The goal of drawings is design intent. It's making sure that those building it understand your design intent, and what better way than these type of drawings here. So there's the elevation set. Here's wall sections here. If you guys saw the, I had a couple videos talking about cutting framing and having the X in it and stuff like that. What you're seeing here, as far as the wall section and the framing, that's all modeled. Those are all modeled pieces. And so I'll get to the structural drawings in a second. With residential construction, especially stick-built residential construction. And notice that these even have shading and depth queuing and all that great stuff. And here you can see the section the other way. So just two sections, longitudinal, latitudinal, whatever, long, short, whatever you want to call it. And just to give the idea of the construction, the construction thoughts and processes there. Some of you may notice this light. I did a video where I built, back when I was deciding what lights to choose, I built this light from scratch on a live stream. I'll put a link to it below, when I was trying to decide what kind of light fixture I wanted to do in this dining room. So that's kind of cool there. But modeling the framing, and I'll jump past reflected ceiling plans because there's not much to see there. But modeling the framing, when it comes to residential construction, to me it's a no-brainer for the value it adds versus the time that it takes to do it. Especially because I was building a lot of this myself, but also it was helpful as the general contractor to be able to explain it to folks who were building it, to be able to sit there and work out the details of all of these things beforehand was super helpful. And some examples of that, and you can see I have an axon of it here, which you're seeing the crop region, so forget the lines there. But some examples of that are some of the headers down at these windows, because of the floor to floor height, had to be sunken up. There wasn't enough room, so there's sistered headers on the rim joists. And so being able to decide those things by stacking it and actually building it in there, not only did it help me understand better the quantities and material counts, but also be able to explain to those building the main framing, what was going on there. Same thing up here, being able to explain the header situation, so on and so forth. And so all of this is just beam systems and structural beams and framing, and I've done a couple videos on that as well. I'm not gonna dig into that today because we're gonna go through the whole process. If you want, if you're interested in me doing an entire video on just modeling that piece of it, then shoot me a comment or in the chat right now, and I'll put that on the queue. But going through that process, especially on a project of this size, which isn't very large, it's totally worth it. At a minimum, roof, floor, etc. framing is awesome. Wall framing is super helpful too, because of what I just said there. You can really try and figure out some of those details ahead of time, and it just makes it so much easier to figure them out in 3 dimensions. One of the things that I sort of created the problem myself was making this sort of standalone kind of deck out here, because I wanted to hide the stairs, and that was more of an aesthetic thing / usability thing. I didn't want the stairs all out in the yard. I didn't want them going into the driveway over here, but it also created this little patio, separate patio that we have where I have a fire pit and stuff, and I love it out there. But as far as just framing it out and structure of it, you can see there's 3 2x10s, 2 2x10. It becomes this giant thing, and so long story short, and the sort of takeaway from that actual process there is really, I promise you, when you really start learning and understanding Revit structural, just beam systems alone, just start digging into beam systems, especially if you're doing a lot of stick-built wood framing. Beam systems alone, it's not a lot of effort to model these things. I promise you, it's not that much more. And the value you get out of that process, as opposed to just cutting a section and figuring out in one location and figuring out 3-dimensionally and then cutting the section, is priceless. So if you're doing stick built balloon frame, whatever you want to call it, I 100%. Those walls were just beam systems hosted vertically. If you want to use curtain systems or MWF framing or whatever those things are, go for it. But I could promise you, I do it on all the residential work that I do. It just helps so much to understand and also explain the picture. So that's kind of the overview of the Revit side of it, the drawing side of it, and then I also, again, as the general contractor, right, I'm also trying to figure out schedule, timing, figure out what the work that I wasn't self-performing, where was it, where did it need to happen, what's the time frame, etc. So here's my schedule here. You don't have to read every piece unless you really wanted to, but there's a couple things I want to teach you guys or talk to you guys about here, which is I'm using a program called Project Libre. And so anyone who's done schedules like this before, knows that typically it's Microsoft Project or Primavera, P6, Oracle, whatever it's called now. This is actually an open source free scheduling program that is super easy to use. And I'll put a link to it after the stream. Super easy to use, and it's based on the backbone of those two programs. So if you understand any one of those, it's very simple. But it is extremely simple to figure out. And I was lucky enough, shout out to my buddy Eric Murray, who helped me out on some of these durations based on a project he just finished, and then reaching out to some subcontractors to get durations. But I kind of mocked out a schedule beforehand for various different reasons. First of all, trying to make sure that we'll finish on time, but also for the sake of financing and so on and so forth. And so for the most part, these durations ended up being pretty dead on. What you'll realize is as I show you, is rough carpentry was the one that burned me hard. As you can see in here, I basically had 10 working days, if I'll show right here. So for rough carpentry, I had essentially 10 working days for roughing that out. And that was based on 2 stories, 12 by 15 footprint, and then a deck, and not even finishing. It's all just rough carpentry, sheathing, etc. What you'll see is that ended up taking a lot longer, and we'll sort of talk about why. And actually, maybe we'll jump right into that. Before jumping into it, the one thing I did want to talk about though is financing and estimating and all of that good stuff, because I think it's something important to not only the architects out there, but also the contractors, and then also if there's any owners or people thinking about doing this to go through it. I think as architects, it's until we've gone through the process of figuring out how to pay for something like an addition or a new home, I think it's hard for us to fully understand what our clients are going through as well. And that's kind of why I did want to talk about it just briefly. And so, a couple people in there are liking Project Libre, which is awesome. Yes. And it's free. Yes, open source, free, etc. So, why I wanted to bring it up is for a couple of reasons. First, let's just jump into sort of the estimate piece of it. So, let me pull that up on a second here. So, if you guys, there's an episode, a live stream from a while back where I talked about Power BI and Revit, and I kind of went through. This screen here, which was one of the first dashboards I sort of did early on. And so this was a straight takeoff of Revit, as including some soft cost. And so because of that, it only included model elements, right? And so at the time, it was more of me just sort of figuring out the hard cost of the model elements that existed. Obviously, that means there's no site work. There's no, anything that wasn't modeled wasn't in there. And then I was also only using basically RS means data for it. So as you saw, the hard cost came in around $56,000 to $60,000, with the soft cost around $5,000. So then, as the project developed and became more real, I started mocking up a real estimate. Again, pulling quantities from the model, but then using actual validated numbers from lumberyards, subcontractors, etc. And I started filling that in. And what you'll notice right away is that just the general requirements and site prep alone was coming out to almost $9,000. And remember, I had like 4 in the beginning, so obviously you can see automatically all my assumed costs there were pretty low. But as the GC, as the GC and the architect in the job, now you got to think about dumpsters, you got to think about porta potties, you got to think about potentially portable heaters, you got to think about zip walls and dust control and all of that stuff, and those are the soft costs that, or I guess the hard costs, but those are the things that you don't really think in there. The survey, I had a number in there, but I only did the first survey, I didn't do the second survey, and so on. So all of those things kind of, those add up, obviously. So I was already a little on the behind on that front. And then you start going down the list, and remember that. So this is also to set this up again. Remember, this was the end of 2020, rolling into 2021. So this was just before the wood market went crazy, and I remember in like October or so to December, when I was trying to figure out sort of the how I was financing it. That was the discussion I had with a friend of mine, was because at that point in time wood was already pretty expensive, but it was should I wait and see if it in the springtime or something, if it tapers down. I thank heavens that I didn't, because anyone who remembers March or so of 21 is when wood just went bananas. From the pandemic, the supply chain, all that stuff, it went crazy. So I was lucky enough to actually purchase and install and use pretty much all of the wood stuff in January, February. It was still probably 30% over the typical market, but it wasn't the 60% it was going to be in March. So thank God for that. Lucky timing on that front. Scrolling down again, excavation earthwork, you could see, almost $8,000, which I don't think I carried that in the model number at all either. And foundation work, most of these numbers were kind of close to where it was, a little higher here and there for labor than I anticipated. Anyone who's ever used RS Means, that it's pretty much always going to be lower until you get the real numbers. Rough framing, you could see, was about $7,000. Roofing, so roofing and siding was something I was toying with who was going to do that, and I ended up doing siding myself, but obviously carrying materials. Windows and doors was something that I had hard numbers from, because I called the local supply, and I had to order those basically immediately. And so for all the Marvin Elevate windows and doors, it came out to around $9,000, give or take. That's what and that's including the French door interior. Electrical about $8,500. HVAC, which was pretty simple, just tacking on one supply essentially. Plumbing was radiator, just one up here. There's a radiant baseboard that went out in the dining room. Downstairs, I ended up doing a split unit here on the wall. So I installed the split unit myself, just paid for it. And then if I roll all the way down to the bottom, what you're going to see is the total hard costs ended up being around $93,000, and that's the actualized, $89,000, and then soft cost around $3,500, for a total of $95,000. So just a little thing there. Hopefully that gives you a sense of. Granted, this was in 2020, or 2020 to 2021, so things have changed a little bit. But it was interesting because I went through this whole process, and initially I was going to get a construction loan, and this is why I wanted to just bring this up real quickly. If you haven't gone through that process, it's a pain in the butt. And so I ended up actually self-funding a lot of this through savings and a couple other methods, and then taking out a small personal loan, and then refinancing at the end and paying the small personal loan. So I ended up doing okay at the end of the day. But I waited. We actually could have started this back in, say, October if I knew that path was going to be how I went. But instead, I waited almost 2 months for the bank and underwriters to tell me that they could only fund a certain amount of it based on as designed as an appraisal, 80%, whatever. And so I still would end up having self-funded anyway. So unfortunately, that's part of what you have to think of, right? Is first of all the documentation you need for that, and then also what that means to your clients. So I wanted to go through that because I think it's super important. Before we jump into the start of construction, though, I did want to take a quick moment to hear from our sponsor. So as you saw there, sponsor of this episode and this season of BIM After Dark Live is RevitFamily.biz. If you haven't heard of them, they are a family creation company that makes residential Revit families from doors to windows to cabinets and more. Brenton, the creator, will be on this show this season as well, so stay tuned. And he's been on the show before, but he was not only nice enough to sponsor this season, but he was also nice enough to offer you guys, if you look up there, 20% off any bundle of his families. And so head on over to RevitFamily.biz and save 20% by using offer code RevitKid23. Okay, so we're at this point now. I got the permit approval. Permit was probably the easiest part of this, believe it or not. Went through 2 months of banking stuff to decide that I wasn't going to use a bank except for a small, I think it was like $19,000 personal loan. And then it was time to now actually start doing the work and reaching out to the subcontractors, bidding the job and getting some numbers, well, I got numbers at the point, but locking in some dates and starting this process. And so for anyone who's ever gone through this process of general contracting, let's say, of some sort, a lot of times the hardest piece of this is scheduling, but getting guys on site and getting the right guys on site at the right time and getting those folks done and so on and so forth. So as we move on, the clock is ticking and now we're rolling into January 2021 and it's time to start. January 2021 was actually probably one of the warmest Januaries we've had in a while. And so we started with excavation. This is demolition of the rock wall, as you can see on the left hand side there, and some demolition of the rock wall, and then excavating of the actual foundation. Instead of stepping footings, this was a nice little sort of cost saving thing. Instead of stepping footings, we just went down to the lowest footing on the right hand side and or this north side, I guess it would be, and just made it a straight footing all the way across. And instead of having a whole bunch of steps to get down to the bottom, it just made sense on a small footprint like this. And then a nice little drone footage of what that looked like when he was done padding out the footing with the little island of dirt left over in the middle there, and then putting the gravel on there too. The gravel's an interesting one because I actually modeled in the gravel for under the deck and under the footings, and I used those quantities to order the gravel and have it delivered. And it was a pretty cool success story because at the end of the job, you can see the pile of gravel over there on the left hand side. At the end of the project, there was like one little shovel full of gravel left, so it was like the absolute perfect amount. And here we go, pouring the footings. This is my boy Enrique, who was the coolest foundation guy ever. He did an incredible job with concrete, and here he is putting the notice how it's just straight formwork, a straight foundation instead of a whole bunch of steps. This was the pre-slab at inspection, so I the inspector came out to check all that before we put the slab in. There's the slab, which ended up being the finished floor. And so you'll see that in pictures and so on and so forth. And so he had a nice little trowel finish on it. And that was that. The concrete was probably one of the smoothest parts of the process. It made me feel great. Made me feel awesome as far as how the process was going. It was warm. The deliveries were on time. The excavator was on time. Concrete guy was on time. It was good to go. The only thing that we kind of ran into during the concrete process, which was a pretty easy fix at the end of the day, but it did modify a few things for me, was this footing right here. So we knew where the septic tank was, but I wasn't really sure exactly where the run for the lines were to it. And so the septic tank is basically over here if you're looking at this floor plan. And then you kind of saw that the pipe came out of the house somewhere in this general area, but we didn't know what it did from here, whether it turned, whether it went straight, and so on and so forth. And as luck would have it, it ran directly exactly where this column was located on my plans. So, it couldn't be 6 inches this way or 6 inches that way. He literally dropped a plumb bob, and the line was exactly where the column was for the deck. So it was not too bad of a fix. So I had it when he was laying out the columns. I reworked the deck, and basically we shifted the posts and recentered all the posts as we go along. So let me Sorry, I'm just going to jump to the floor plan to show you. And that was something that was super easy because I can jump in. I quickly fixed it. I actually also another great thing to think about was, I was working from home inside. They were outside. I actually just ran inside, made the change, came outside with a new set of drawings, or the iPad at this point in time, which is pretty cool. I just want to make sure. Sorry, I was just checking the chat. Cool. So I updated the drawings, brought them out, good to go. And that was kind of the big tweak there. And then we come into February. So now we're 2 months into construction. We've got 3 months left before Adeline arrives, who my soon-to-be daughter Adeline arrives, and I'm feeling pretty good, right? Concrete's done. We got framers supposed to be on site January 9th or 19th, something like that. The slab was poured. First day they came out, they said the slab wasn't cured enough for them to work on. Kind of disagreed, but whatever, it's fine. So we gave it another day. Came out the next day, and we had probably one of the coldest and most snow in February that I think I've seen in a very long time. So the first day they come out, and it was 19 degrees, and and it was pretty cold. Luckily not snowing yet, but the crew came out, and I wasn't feeling too hot about it because when they left that day, you could see it's snowing. They left a little early, and that's actually the underside of my overhang of my first floor of the house, to the point where you could see here, those are actually the pipes into the toilet and the bathtub of my main bathroom. And so, needless to say, not too happy there. A few conversations with their general manager or foreman or whatever it is, and we had a little coming to Jesus meeting to try and figure this out. But what the lesson learned there was, don't know why they took that underside of the soffit off. There was nothing on the drawings, nothing on the plans, and so it might have been something that should have been more clearly either described by me to the foreman or by the drawings themselves. So I actually ended up having to insulate that and put plastic up that day in the snow to make sure that nothing froze in my house, and so on and so forth. So after all that, we had a few issues with the initial framer, the initial framing crew. It seemed like they may not have been the A team. So they were really struggling to get that first floor, what I'm sitting in now, framed up. So eventually, again, after lots of conversations, finally got them on site, and they started laying this thing out and started moving a little quicker. Here's a little video of what it looked like getting a little more into January. You can see the snow. You can see it just looks damn cold outside, and you can see we're kind of starting to get further along. As you can see from the framing, it seems pretty simple to me. That's kind of why I didn't carry a long duration, but it turns out it wasn't as simple as I thought. The other thing that I wanted you guys to notice was this guy right here. One of the things as designers that we don't always think about is the phases in between new or existing and new, and how that may interact while people are living in the home, right? And so, one of the things I knew was going to be an issue, but I didn't really pay too much attention to it while it was happening, mainly because it was freezing outside and it looked okay initially. But as you can see, this is the existing roof tie-in, and it doesn't look too waterproof when it's raining and snowing in the middle of Connecticut. And so what that means is I woke up one morning to this, which hopefully you guys can see. That's water dripping in my water dripping from a can light in my kitchen, from all of the leaks happening at the valley of that connection. So lesson learned there is to pay really close attention to how temporary provisions are going to be in place to make sure that the existing structure, et cetera, go in place. And so luckily, what I ended up doing was calling the roofer who was waiting for me to call him to come out for the final, and having him come out, and he helped me with putting proper tarp and waterproofing on to make sure that that valley wasn't leaking into the kitchen as we kind of went along, which is unfortunate. So just to move along a little faster, that was, once we get beyond that, once we got to the roof, at this point in time, and you could see even here, look at the snow on the roof, and notice how it's not finished and framed. Obviously when it snowed, it was fine, but when the snow started melting, we had ourselves a little bit of an issue there. A little bit of an issue there. The other thing that happened too, as far as the demo is concerned, is you could see this little area here. They removed all these shingles, and then remember they removed the soffit underneath, and so that required a change, not a change, but a detail to sort of figure out how we're going to now fix that. Initially, the thought was we were just going to saw off the bottom of the cedar shingles, make them flush, and then just slide underneath them, and then we won't have to touch anything, leave everything in place, and it was good to go. Obviously that didn't happen, so that's where Revit came in to sort of help me explain to them sort of how we plan on fixing it. And so the detail we came up with, which modified a little bit, but for the most part it was removing the shingles, sliding up some flashing, obviously putting back a soffit here, and then waterproofing behind the ledger board all the way up, and then putting it all over there. So that's something that we had to kind of figure out on the fly, and I basically went outside with them and showed them this model to explain how I planned on waterproofing the disaster that they generated by removing too much crap. All right, so another useful tool, obviously, to be able to explain that without making sketches, drawings, etc., and it ended up being extremely useful as far as just showing them how to go through it. Finally, we're making some progress. You can see here we got some weatherproofing shield that's temporary there between the valleys. We've got our zip walls are starting to go up. We're starting to make progress. Notice all the snow, by the way. Another thing as a general contractor of the project, if you don't pay someone to do snow removal every day, then you're doing it. So I was out there all the time in February with my snowblower, my leaf blower, shovel, and just trying to clear the way for these guys to be able to work, which is fun. But it is what it is, and something that you kind of learn as you're going through. But then finally, we're getting towards the end of February, and you can see we've got roof sheathing on, we've got zip wall on, we've got windows in, we've got taped. Here's another picture of the other side, and finally we're getting there. We're looking good, and probably the most exciting thing was starting to see the rooms actually coming together. So here is the office that I'm sitting in right now as framed. You can see we've actually got walls, we've got windows, we've got rafters, we've got some of the blocking starting to go in for not just the sheathing, but also there's blocking that we needed for the siding, and it's all flashed and good to go. I see a quick question there. What is zip wall? Zip wall is what you saw on the outside. It's let me go back one here. See that green? It's called zip system. So instead of doing plywood or OSB and then a separate layer of house wrap, whatever you want to call it, air vapor barrier, and then taping it, it's basically a OSB type of board with the waterproofing adhered to it, and then you just tape the seams. Some people, there's differing opinions to it, but I personally like it, and that's kind of what you're seeing there. So it's basically the sheathing and the air vapor barrier, or the vapor barrier, I guess, in this sense, all in one, essentially. Oh, sorry, zip wall. I said two different things there. Zip system for zip wall. The zip wall I was talking about initially is a temporary plastic barrier, which I'll show you. There'll be some pictures of that as well. So now February is done. So if you remember, I said 10 to 14 days, I think, for rough framing. Well, we started February 1st or 10th or something like that, or whatever. We didn't finish till about February 28th. So basically the entire month of February was dedicated to rough carpentry, as opposed to 2 weeks. So that was tough. That was obviously a tough one to swallow. The good news was a lot of the non-permitted work was the work that I was doing myself, and so I could spend as much time and hours as I needed going through it. So the most exciting thing to me after dealing with the water leaking issues in the kitchen and stuff was having the roof on. So you can see here the roof's on, the gutters are on, the rough framing's done, the eaves on, and a couple other things. But having that roof on was amazing. And not only that, but now we have a watertight box. And so from there, right, we've got the roof on, we've got the windows in, we've got the watertight box around it. Now we can start cranking on the interior. So MEP roughs, mechanical roughing, electrical roughing, plumbing roughing, removing the concrete wall, so on and so forth. We can start cranking. The month of March got a lot of stuff done. So as you can see, as we go inside, on the left-hand side is a picture of the foundation wall. On the right-hand side is the picture of the foundation wall demolished. So having a specialty contractor come in to cut that wall was a feat. But they did an awesome job. Lesson learned there. Ask them if they carried cleaning up the debris and the rubble in their number, because they did not. And so I was left to clean up all those stones you see on the bottom there, which dumpster companies absolutely love seeing in there. So little lesson learned there. But now we're starting to get somewhere. The zip wall, by the way, for the question in the thing, the zip wall is what you see in the background there. It's a plastic barrier that you can use these two little extended poles that pressurize it and pull it and attach it to the sides, and it makes it kind of like a dust and air barrier. But it did a pretty good job for the most part. Although this concrete work was probably the most dirty. That made a ton of dust, and I couldn't get enough negative pressure to keep it in. So I had to do a little cleaning in the basement afterwards, but that's okay. Just some examples of the plumbing rough. You could see the connection, the continuation of the radiant baseboard, the copper piping that goes out to it. And now here's some of the electrical rough. Definitely take pictures of everything before you start insulating or whatnot. And so you can see there's the electrical. You can see some of the insulation going in, the hanger for the split unit right there, but also all the blocking too. I ended up going with cedar channel gap siding, and so I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But with cedar siding, it's really helpful to have the nails going into the fasteners going into 2x blocking and not just into the OSB, or else they will pull away. So every 2 feet or so, installing these blocking was something that I did with my father, and that was a pain in the ass. Not gonna lie. So having all of that, in place before the spray foam insulation arrived was the next push. So we had electrical rough. This is the office, by the way. So this is the window you guys are looking at right behind me right now. That's what's in the wall there. There's the 2 outlets. This is the window that you're not seeing, which is over here on the left-hand side. And oops, sorry for that loud noise. If you guys heard that, apologize. And then if we go upstairs to show a little more of the rough. Oh no, here's the insulation. So I did do spray foam insulation. So it was important to make sure that we had the MEP rough, the electrical rough in the walls. Made sure that we had that inspected and approved before the guys came in and sprayed. So again, another tight crunch there, but definitely spray foamed. John Erickson asked if those are 2x8 studs. Nope, those are 2x6 studs. 2x8 studs would be wild, huh? No, those are 2x6 studs. And then even horizontally, I think those are just leftover 2x6s or 2x4s I used. I don't remember exactly which ones. And then just to show you, I didn't show a lot of the dining room, but because it was happening at the same time, I just wanted to show you what that looked like on the inside as well. Spray foam felt really nice to have, and they did a great job. But again, making sure that everything was approved and whatnot in time for those guys to show up and do the spray foam was huge. You can see down here a little bit, you can see the copper piping for the radiator. That was the rough in there. That was pretty much the only plumbing work that we had to do, which was very nice. Sorry about that noise again. I don't know what my Windows is doing. Here's the channel gap siding. So initially I was going to go with board and batten, but then I decided to do the siding myself, and I said I'm not doing board and batten myself. Screw that. So I ended up going with channel gap siding, which is cedar rough sawn. And this is kind of how it came. It was sitting there for a while because I ordered it way too early. Luckily, I kept it really dry. And at this point in time, I wasn't installing too much, but I was staining it. Taking the time to stain all these lovely pieces with a solid black Benjamin Moore stain, which was an awesome stain, I have to say, and looks great now. So here's all the boards laid out and stained, ready to install. Now the installation's done, you can see this is actually the view that I'm looking at right now, towards the under the deck. Drywall is starting to go in. This is all work that I self-performed myself with my father, and so pretty much anything that didn't require a permit. So drywall, taping, mudding, painting, siding, all the finishes on the deck, so on and so forth, painting, etc. All of that was work that we self-performed. So as we go in here, you can see this is the office starting to take some shape. You can see the doors on the right-hand side into living space. Up here is a good example of something that that was a nice change, that I didn't see in the model, or I didn't think about when modeling it. So if I flip over to Revit, I'll show you what that detail kind of looks like. So as you can see, I went with exposed rafters. If you guys have seen the video in the background here, I went with exposed rafters, and I did some acoustic stuff in between it. But if I go to this section here and I turn on my section box, let me unhide this. So something I didn't really think about when it came to the spray foam, if you look under here, well, a couple things that, so not only the spray foam, but also the drywall, right? You know, this is an area where I'm looking at it like, well, you know, the spray foam was done, and you know, how are we going to drywall this? Do I want to drywall in between this? I don't want to. The spray foam was pretty ugly up there, trying to figure out what to do. But then on the other side, we had to soffit no matter what, because we have the overhang of the existing floor, and then we have this new 2x beam. So we were pulling out to a drywall soffit here no matter what. So the thought there was we just installed blocking across this, and then made another soffit on that side. And so that's kind of what you're seeing in these photos. Let me jump back here. So that's what you're seeing here is we installed blocking in between, and then we just installed drywall across here. So now we don't have to worry about those indents, and now it's just symmetrical to this side, which we had no choice but to do a soffit with. So pretty cool. That would have been something that, you know, had I not been the one doing the work, I would have just used Revit to model that and show them, but I was doing the work, so I didn't need to bother with that. Yogi just asked, any pitfalls of spray foam? No, you have to make a decision. Are you going to have a vented attic or roof or not? And so if you do spray foam, you're basically saying I'm sealing, I'm not letting air, you know, I'm making a sealed box, right? And so that you just got to plan for it that way. Ideally, you'd also want a little bit of bridging, something that breaks up the thermal bridging between the sheathing and the 2x. I didn't, and I don't think I'm going to have any issues, especially because it's the R value of the full wall is just astronomically large, and we don't really see too much of that. Ideally, you'd want a little bit of a thermal break there, but nothing yet. But you just have to make a decision. If you're going to do that, then you're making a closed, hermetically sealed box. Basically, you want to make sure that you're closing it off, and then you shouldn't run into too many air vapor problems. So yeah, let's keep rolling through this. And then upstairs, here's some drywall here. This is a little piece. This is a little piece here that I'll talk about in a minute, which is again one of those things that you don't think about as an architect as much as when you're going to build it, and it usually comes up after the fact. Is, you know, what do you want to do for drywall around this, right? How do you how do I clean up this drywall? And if you put a piece of drywall just across here, it's just going to crack. If you try and tape and mud this, it's going to move, etc. So what I ended up doing there is I ended up doing a steel plate, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Before we move in, how to not get blurry lines when printing with shadows. Mike, great question. Mike just asked, how do you get blurry lines when printing with shadows? You print raster presentation mode, and you crank up the resolution, and it doesn't look that blurry. I don't think it looks blurry. You know, depending on how you print it, and if you pay attention to the DPIs and stuff, that's one thing. You don't want to print it on like a black and white OSE or something like that. You want to print it on like a color laser jet printer or something that's going to make some crisp lines out of rastered images, not vector images. Otherwise, yeah. So just pay attention to the resolution there. All right, so now we're drywalled. We're starting to, the shape is starting to take, the rooms are starting to take shape. We're starting to get some finishes going on, and now it's a little bit of a rush to get to the point where I can have the electricians come back and the plumber come back and do their finish work. And And so I need to get to a certain point before that. So that was March. A lot of work got done in March. Time's still ticking. Now we're in April. The project's still not done, obviously. And my daughter's still on the way. So as we roll into April, April, similar to March, was a busy month. Drywall is now getting mudded and taped. As you can see here, this is my office that I'm sitting in now. You can see the windows, you can see the tape, you can see the mud, all the good stuff going on. You can see the electrical rough in the ceiling there, as well as the MEP rough. And then painted. The electrician didn't want to come back and do the final the finishes, so putting on the outlets and the covers and the lights until we were painted. So I forced myself to really get that done. And then you can see here, this is with the painted walls, painted ceiling, stained beams. If you can see, the beams were stained, and the final electrical is coming in as well. And then finally sealing the floor. And so this is kind of before doing trim work and final trim work around the baseboard and stuff. This is basically what it looked like. So just to see a little before and after of the office. So now we're getting closer and closer to move-in time. Staining the floor, super cool, by the way. Anyone who hasn't done that, or sealing the floor, super cool. As long as you're looking for that rougher finish, it came out great. One of the things I did, which I thought was kind of neat, is if you look down on the floor here, now you could see there's a lot of hand scribing that I did when I was explaining to the framers, like the size of the rough opening and stuff. I actually left that and sealed it in. I think it looks pretty neat. And then around the edges, you can see a little thermal break for the wall to slab connection. That's kind of what you're seeing around the edges there. But it was super easy. The sealing of the concrete floor, other than just making sure it was cleaning it well beforehand, was actually extremely easy. And then upstairs, vaulted ceiling. Pain in the ass for anyone who's an amateur drywaller. It's absolute pain in the ass to deal with. Luckily my father helped me a lot on this, and he's fantastic at drywall and sanding especially, and so he went berserk on this as far as sanding is concerned. But just a little example of what it looked like, and then here's what it looked like painted. There's my son in the corner cleaning up. So painted, drywalled, and then they came back to finish up with electrical. You can see there's a light fixture there, and then the flooring down the bottom there, which is awesome. So that light fixture, for those of you who don't remember, that was one that I studied during a live stream, trying to figure out which light fixture to go for, and I think I chose the right one. And I'd show you how to build that thing parametric from scratch if you go check it out. All right, as we keep going along here. Now we're outside as well. So inside's looking good. And now you can see I'm starting to do the siding too. And then also you'll notice all the cedar shingles on the side here, and so on and so forth. So talking about siding, and as I roll through this a little bit, super excited to have electricity on too, which is awesome. And then we roll into May. So now it's crunch time. Now we've got 26 days until the scheduled induction of my wife for my daughter. So May 26th was when it was scheduled. So some of the things that I want to talk about there is, obviously we're feeling better because we're on the inside. We're looking much cleaner. Something I did for the siding here is I did use Revit for the Takeoff for ordering materials. And so if I jump back over to Revit here. One of the things that's hard when you're doing takeoffs, and what you'll notice is I have a whole bunch of schedules in here. Here we go, schedules. So I have a whole bunch of schedules here, quantity schedules, and so on and so forth. If you look over on the corner here, multi-category schedules, etc. This was in Revit 2020, so we didn't have the awesome multi-category, so I had to have system schedules for everything and so on and so forth. But if you look at if you look at the siding, one of the things that I was doing here was framing these double windows with a trim piece, and then having this horizontal in the middle to make it look kind of like this one unitized system, right? And almost look like this giant curtain wall with like louvers in between it, etc. That's kind of the look I was going for. And so it seems like an insignificant thing because these were just this is just 4-inch clapboard siding, essentially, horizontal siding, I should say. But the one thing that I screwed up on is not anticipating, when I took the area off, how those overlaps affected it and how I was tightening them up. So if you look closely here, what I ended up doing was these were 6-inch, beveled cedar siding, but I overlapped them. I only wanted about 3 inches to go, and so when I did the takeoff, I was using the area. I was putting a little factor in there, but I just didn't figure that 3-inch overlap. So I ended up getting to the point where I was like halfway in here, and I didn't have enough material. And at that point in time, we're in May. And so I probably paid as much for the remaining material as I did for all of the material for the siding, and I had to go get it. I had to stain it, cut it, all that good stuff. So a little bit of a pain in the butt, and something lesson learned there when you're doing takeoff via the model, especially if you're not doing the individual stuff, is that paying attention to how that affects, and making sure that you have the fluff in that you need for cut and waste and so on and so forth. So as you can see, siding's coming together now. First time I ever sided a house before, so it was a lesson learned, but I was pretty happy with how it came out. Same thing with the decking too. You can see there's Jacob and I standing up on the decking. We did Trex decking, as well as the railings there, which were also a pain in the butt. These railings, if you ever dealt with these, are an absolute nightmare. But that was the interesting part there is, initially I was going to go with just pressure treated decking, sealed, and call it a day. But because wood went so crazy in that year, it was only a couple cents more to go to Trex, because pressure treated wood was just so insanely expensive. So I ended up going with Trex, which was pretty sweet. And I'm very happy with it as far as what it is. The other thing with decking, for anyone who doesn't know, as architects, we draw all these details. We don't realize sometimes the amount of hardware that goes into decking, the amount of Simpson strong tie crap that is in that deck, and the amount of impact wrenching that it takes to put all that stuff in there. Whether it's if you do the anchor bolts for these instead of going through it, whether it's the tie back to the building, whether it's all the hangers, you name it. My God, my arm was shaking for weeks after doing that, which was pretty wild. And so now we're really cranking. Again, the cool thing about this part was I was doing all the work myself, which was obviously a lot of work. Thankfully, I had my father help me a lot too, and he was great. He came up a lot, but I could also do it on my own time. So I was in the dining room and the office until 10, 11 o'clock doing taping and painting and all that stuff. So I was able to control it. So it was a ton of work, but it was a lot easier for me to get it done in the time frame that I needed to, because I could work whenever the hell I wanted. It was right outside. So that was super helpful in getting us at least on schedule. So we're moving through the project, and you can see now we're getting really close. This is pretty much substantial completion for what you can see here, right? The siding's done, decking's done, railings are done, lighting, all that stuff is good. So all that's left now is the concrete patio underneath. And so I didn't necessarily need this for the final inspection, but I really wanted to have this done for the final inspection, partly because it needed to hide my foundation wall down here, which for half of this area is actually the footing. For some reason, in 1971, they decided to only put the footing down like 2 feet under grade. So part of that was for that, but there was also some things that I just wanted that part to be finished before the final inspection. So this is kind of the before. We already had the gravel there, so it was just a matter of compacting and making it nice. And then my buddy Enrique came back to finish up, do this beautiful patio underneath, and that was kind of the last piece before I called in the final inspection. And so if you read this here, this is the final inspection, and went well. As you can see, though, the date was 5/25/21, approved, and then that was at 9 a.m. Tuesday morning of May 25th, and then at 8 a.m. Wednesday morning of May 26th, this happened. So we literally made it by a day. Which was incredible. So got the final inspection, got it approved, and then my wife went into labor that night at 4 a.m. So incredible, incredible that it worked out that way. But pretty awesome too, to see sort of the story come full circle like that. So as we roll into wrapping this thing up, obviously we got to show some nice eye candy here of the final project. So, and then I'll also sort of walk through the office and show you some of the stuff that I have set up in here. So first, here's a nice little drone footage of the final project with some more stuff on there. You could see there was still some ladders hanging out because I was doing some work, but for the most part, we had some furniture set up. We're using the space. The grill's there. The thing is good to go. And then the decking's all done. The fan's rolling. Got some plants up there. This is good times. And you can see we're also trying to grow some grass on the right-hand side there. Final grading as well. So as this spins along, then we'll go inside. And I just want to show you guys. Here's the office. And I think this will be cool to sort of go through. This was the office probably a few months after that, after moving everything in and going. So this is basically where I'm sitting right now. And when this stops, these are my little HGTV videos. So as this stops, just to show you guys some ideas as far as the office setup is concerned, this desk right here, it's actually a Husky workbench from Home Depot. And I bought all these different cable trays and drawers to attach to the bottom of it. And it actually has a manual screw on it that makes it go up and down, so it's a standing and sitting desk, even though it's really just a workstation. But it's really cool because it's rated for like 1,200 pounds. So hanging all this crap on it doesn't make it shift, and it also is on wheels, which is awesome. So I can roll it around. The split unit was a great thing. If you guys aren't familiar with split units, definitely worth doing for heating and cooling. Of course, I got the BIM box sitting on the desk right here. Got the double monitor, the cameras, all this good stuff going on. And I'll show you another view. This is basically the view I'm seeing right now, other than it being darker. So you can see there's the deck underneath. There's the French doors going into the existing walkway. Another thing that just as a lesson learned too, right here, the concrete strip between where the wall was and the floor was, that was something that didn't really take into account. I kind of assumed that it would have been a cleaner cut. Don't know why. So we actually ended up having to mix our own and sort of pour that little piece there. So it was a little rougher than I initially thought, but it goes along with the aesthetic pretty well. And then just for fun, I'll show you guys what the dining room looks like upstairs too, because why not? And so here's the finished dining room upstairs as it rolls through, and you can see some of the stuff. The beam is the part that I didn't necessarily talk about, which I guess I could have. So up here, you can see there's this plate. And remember, I was trying to figure out how to fill in that gap. And so my uncle actually is a machine toolist. He has a CNC machine. He does this thing. So what I ended up doing was actually using Revit and designing this plate. Where is it? Bracket. Come on. Let me show you the. Nope. Here it is, bracket. Okay. So I ended up designing this plate. We ended up modifying it a little bit, so this isn't the final drawing. But I used Revit to design the plate, and that's what he generated for these areas here. These areas here. So instead of drywalling it, we left it exposed, and I just adhered this plate to it, which was awesome. And then just another view of the dining room, so you guys can see it up above there. Always nice to see the final projects there. And then the final photo here. So that was the process, man. That was it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Thanks for the questions. It was just super fun. I think I did see a couple of questions about, is there a video on your library that the schedule's set up for takeoffs, etc. So one of the things that I am going to be doing, so keep out for it on the channel. I don't know if I'll do a live stream on it or just a video on it, is I do plan on packaging my residential template and making it available to you guys. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm actually going to not only give you the ability to purchase the template, but also I'll put the sample file of this project in that template. So you'll be able to have the template, and you'll be able to have a sample project with how I did all of that, including those schedules. Those schedules are some of them are from the construction template, some of them I made myself, and some of them will be different now because it's 2023 and you can add more system families to it. Yeah. So there you go. We made it on time. We made it less than 24 hours before my daughter was born. I made it through the process, learned a lot of different things, and hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the process. If you did enjoy this a lot and you wanted me to sort of expand on pieces of it, let me know, and maybe I can turn it into a little bit of a series. The one thing I do regret is that I didn't take enough content. I had thousands of pictures, but I didn't take enough video content of the process that I wish I did, mainly because I was just in the heart of it and it was hard to do it. But if you do want that, then let me know. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and support RevitFamily.biz. Got a guest coming back again next week. We're going to be continuing on this theme of residential Revit, or residential architecture, I should say, as a little hint towards the guest coming next week. And I hope you guys are really enjoying this. So thank you so much. If you have any further questions, just comment on this video after it's live, or shoot me an email, or even hit me up on Twitter, and feel free to discuss it more. Thank you guys so much. And for that, I'll bid you adieu. Thank you so much. See you guys later.